Here are some facts about me. I had many mistresses. I had polio. I neglected my own children. I didn't want to solve the problem of racial discrimination. All facts are truth. I am Franklin D. Roosevelt, the 32nd President of the United States, serving 4 terms and leading the nation through the Great Depression and World War II with the New Deal and steadfast determination. I am ashamed of some things, and some things almost destroyed me. However, it is an integral part of my life. It proves that famous people have the same problems and life challenges as everyone else. Now all about it in more detail. There are some shadows that even the brightest of days cannot dispel. I have spent a lifetime building, creating, shaping the future of this great country, yet, in the quiet of my heart, there are moments where the price of ambition is too much to bear. The choices I made, in the stillness of my own failings, are not easily forgotten. It was Eleanor, my dear Eleanor, who walked beside me through the thick and thin of this world, through triumphs and hardships, through storms and calm. Together, we built not just a marriage, but a partnership grounded in shared ideals of justice, equality, and progress. But there was a time when I, too, let the winds of temptation pull me away from her side. I never meant to cause her pain, yet pain I did cause, and the wound cut deeper than I could have imagined. You see, Eleanor and I, we were not just husband and wife, but political partners. From the earliest days of my political career in the New York State Senate to the presidency, she was my anchor and my inspiration. Yet behind the curtains of our public life, I betrayed that partnership in ways I could not undo. Lucy Mercer was a name that still haunts me. She was Eleanor's secretary, someone who entered our lives during the years when I was consumed by ambition and work. The demands of politics, the strain of raising a family, and the pressure to achieve greatness had taken their toll on our marriage. Lucy became a solace in a time when I felt adrift, a connection that I foolishly mistook for something more. When Eleanor discovered the affair in 1918, it was like a thunderclap in our lives. She found a bundle of love letters, evidence of my betrayal. At that moment, the foundation of our marriage, already strained by distance and duty, seemed to crumble. Eleanor confronted me with a quiet dignity, but I could see the pain in her eyes. She gave me an ultimatum: end the affair or risk losing her forever. I ended it. My mother, Sarah, also intervened, threatening to cut me off financially if I pursued a divorce. But the damage was done. The trust between Eleanor and me had been broken, and it would never fully heal. For months, the silence between us was deafening. We lived as strangers in the same house, trying to navigate the wreckage of our relationship while maintaining a united front for the sake of our children and our public lives. And yet, in time, we reconciled, not as a traditional couple, but as allies bound by a shared vision for the future. Eleanor forgave me, though I knew she never forgot. She poured herself into her own pursuits, championing social causes, civil rights, and women's equality with a fervor that inspired millions. She became a force unto herself, an icon of progress and change, while I continued my path in politics. In many ways, we found a new equilibrium. Our marriage evolved into a partnership of equals, rooted in mutual respect and a shared commitment to public service. But the personal wounds remained. Eleanor never truly opened her heart to me again, and I could not blame her. My actions had created a chasm that no amount of time or effort could bridge. Lucy Mercer re-entered my life later, during the final years of my presidency. By then, I was a man worn down by war, illness, and the weight of leadership. My battle with polio had left me physically frail, though I rarely showed it to the world. Lucy's presence brought a sense of comfort in those difficult days, though it was always discreet. She was with me at Warm Springs when I passed away in 1945, a fact that caused Eleanor additional pain when she learned of it. I often ask myself, was it worth it? Was the cost of my ambition, my failures as a husband, justified by what we achieved together? We led the nation through the Great Depression, built the New Deal, and fought to secure freedom in the darkest days of World War II. Yet in my personal life, I lost sight of the very things that mattered most: trust, loyalty, and love. Eleanor remained by my side until the end, not out of obligation, but out of an unshakable belief in the work we were doing. She dedicated herself to carrying forward the ideals we had fought for, even after my death, becoming a leading figure in the United Nations and a tireless advocate for human rights. In the quiet moments, I reflect on the weight of it all. I was a man who fought for a better world, yet I could not always do right by the people closest to me. I have lived with this shadow ever since. Forgiveness, it is not easily earned, nor freely given. Eleanor forgave me in her own way, but I know that some wounds never fully heal. And so, I must live with the knowledge that I caused pain to the one person who believed in me more than anyone else. If there is one lesson I can leave behind, it is this: greatness in public life does not absolve us of our personal failings. We must strive to be better, not just as leaders, but as human beings. Perhaps, in the quiet of my heart, I will find the redemption I so dearly seek. Section 2. I had polio. The stage is dark, save for a single spotlight that shines down on Franklin Roosevelt, seated in a heavy, wooden chair. His hands, slightly trembling, rest on the armrests. His voice is steady, though there's a hint of sorrow that lingers with each word. The audience can sense the weight of the man, both physically and emotionally. In the year of 1921, the world as I knew it fell apart. There is a moment, you see, when a man finds himself at the mercy of forces beyond his control, and for me, that moment came without warning. One day, I was a man of action, full of life, and the next, paralyzed, trapped in my own body, a prisoner to something I could not fight. Polio, they called it. A cruel affliction, one that took the use of my legs and with it, a piece of my pride. For a time, I was lost. It is one thing to lose the power of your limbs, but it is another altogether to lose the feeling of being whole. I had been a man of movement, of energy, of forward momentum. I had always believed that it was my will, my relentless will, that could overcome any obstacle. But there, in the stillness of my own body, I found that my will alone was not enough. And yet, in that moment of weakness, I resolved that I would not surrender. I refused to let this disease define me. I would fight, not just to walk again, but to live, to lead. I had spent years learning the art of politics, of power, of progress, but now, I would have to learn the most difficult lesson of all: how to live in the shadows of my own vulnerability. You must understand, I could not let the world see me as weak. I could not bear the thought of the people, my countrymen, seeing me as less than what they believed me to be. So, I hid. I hid from the world. In front of the cameras, in front of the press, I smiled. I walked with a cane, yes, but no one saw how each step was a battle, how every movement was an act of defiance. I surrounded myself with assistants, with aides who would help me stand, help me move. But inside, I was a man at war with himself. The loneliness of it, the isolation, was like a suffocating cloak. I longed for a day when I could simply stand without the help of others, when I could feel the earth beneath my feet without the fear of collapsing. But that day never came. No, I had to live in this prison of my own making, bound by the lie of invincibility that I so desperately clung to. There were times, dark times, when the frustration would threaten to consume me. There were days when the weight of the facade felt unbearable. My mind would race with the fear of being exposed, of the world discovering that I, too, was just a man. And yet, I could not let them see. The country needed me to be strong. The people needed to believe in me. So, I carried on. I led this nation through its darkest days, through war, through depression, through turmoil. I stood, in spite of everything, with resolve. I made decisions, wielded power, and held the very fate of nations in my hands, but never did I escape the quiet prison of my own body. I never stopped feeling the weight of that unspoken truth, that I was not what I appeared to be. Sometimes, in the silence of the night, when the world is still and the weight of it all is too much to bear, I wonder if the cost of that facade was too high. I wonder if my refusal to show weakness, my denial of my own fragility, kept me from the one thing I could never truly conquer, acceptance. And yet, in the end, I chose to serve. I chose to fight for the future, even if I could not escape the truth of my own limitations. For the people of this country, for the ideals of liberty and justice that we hold dear, I pressed on. I faced my demons in silence, I hid my suffering behind a mask of strength, and I led this nation to victory, though in the quiet of my soul, I knew the true victory was in the fight itself. And when I look back now, as I sit here, having fought, having won, perhaps I did not lose as much as I thought. Perhaps the very struggle that once seemed like an insurmountable mountain has, in its own way, forged the man who sits before you now. For even in my weakness, I found strength. And in my isolation, I found the courage to move forward. Asterisk. He pauses, his gaze distant. There's a deep breath, a silent moment where time seems to stop. The weight of his words settles in the air, heavy and resolute. I did not walk the easy path, nor the path of certainty. But I walked, and led, with all that I had. And perhaps that is enough. Section 3, I neglected my own children. I've always said, my friends, that the weight of leadership is never light. We are called upon to carry burdens, some of them monumental, some of them unseen by the world. But there is one weight, perhaps the heaviest of all, that I never learned to bear with grace. It is the weight of family, of children, my children. I entered public life, you see, with all the ambition and drive of a young man eager to make his mark on the world. I sought to bring change, to fix what was broken, to lead this nation through its most trying moments. And in that pursuit, I lost something. No, not something, someone. I lost them, my children. When I think back on those early years, years of promise and passion, I see a man so consumed by the roar of the world outside his door that he cannot hear the quiet voices within. They were young, my sons, full of energy, full of life, and I was gone. Off to Washington, to the struggles of the nation, to the endless meetings and speeches, to the demands of a presidency I could not put aside. My hands reached for the weight of the world, but they never reached far enough for my own flesh and blood. Franklin Jr., Elliot, James, John, and Anna, they were my pride, yet also my greatest failure. They grew up in a world where their father was a symbol, a name whispered in history books, but rarely a presence in their daily lives. Eleanor, God bless her, bore the weight of both parents. She was there for them in ways I never was. She took on the role of not only mother but also the emotional anchor of the family, balancing her own public responsibilities with the private demands of raising our children. But even she struggled to mend the distance my absence created. Eleanor and I did not have a conventional marriage. The strains between us were no secret to those who knew us closely. Yet, despite our differences, she stood firm, providing stability for the children while I was consumed by my duties. She became their confidant, their advocate, their constant. And I was not there. It is a bitter pill, to know that I was a stranger to my own children. I tried, of course, to be a father. I wrote letters during my travels, sent gifts, tried to create moments when I could. But there is a truth in this life that I cannot deny: the ones we love the most, we often neglect the hardest. The distance between us grew with each passing year, with each absence. They needed me, and I was not there for them. They called out for a father, and all they received was silence. My sons, Franklin Jr., Elliot, James, and John, all found their own ways to cope with my absence. Franklin Jr. and Elliot pursued military careers during the war, following in a legacy of service that perhaps they felt was expected of them. James ventured into politics, attempting to carve his own name in a world where mine overshadowed everything. Each of them, in their own way, sought to make sense of a father who was both larger than life and frustratingly distant. Some rebelled against the expectations placed upon them. Others tried to emulate me, but not without resentment. They lived with the knowledge that their father was a public figure first and a private figure, barely at all. Anna, my only daughter, perhaps knew me best. She spent more time with me in my later years, helping with my correspondence, accompanying me during the war. She saw the toll that leadership took on me, but even she could not bridge the gap that years of absence had created. I often wonder if her dedication was born from love or duty, or perhaps both. There is a deep wound in the heart of every man who cannot bridge the distance between himself and his children. The years of absence, the missed moments, the birthdays, the graduations, the milestones, they haunt me still. I cannot undo the years I lost. I cannot fill the emptiness that I left in their hearts. I may have been a man of many accomplishments, of speeches and policies, of wars and victories, but I was not a man of the home. The greatest service I failed to give was to them, the ones who shared my name, but not my time. The ones who lived in the shadows of my ambition and never knew the warmth of my presence. It is a tragic irony, isn't it? To be a man of great power, yet powerless to reach the hearts of those who matter most. Perhaps that is the greatest lesson I carry with me, the reminder that the price of leadership is not just borne by the leader, but by those who are left behind, those who wait, unseen, in the wings. If I could turn back time, I would. But I cannot. I only have the present, the now. And so I speak of this, not as a man seeking forgiveness, but as a man who wishes others might learn from my mistakes. No position of power, no achievement, no victory, can ever replace the love and presence we owe to the ones who call us Father. Section 4. I don't want to solve the problem of racial discrimination. I have often said, my friends, that we have nothing to fear but fear itself. And perhaps, in the eyes of many, I have lived by that creed, facing down economic collapse, leading this nation through the greatest conflict the world has ever known. But there is one fear I did not confront with the same courage. That fear was the fear of change. No, not in the abstract, not the kind of change that people dream of, big speeches and grand declarations. But the kind of change that asks us to look deep into the soul of our nation, to the very heart of its injustice, and say, no more. That kind of change. I did not fully embrace. When I first took office, the world was aflame. The Great Depression had cast its shadow over this land. And we were a nation adrift, seeking a way forward. And I acted. Yes, I acted, creating the New Deal, a vision to lift us from the depths of despair. A vision that sought to put food on the table, to give hope to the hopeless, and to heal the wounds of a broken economy. We established programs like the Civilian Conservation Corps and the Works Progress Administration, which gave jobs to millions of Americans. We reformed the banking system through the Glass-Steagall Act, ensuring that the people's savings were protected. Social Security was born during my presidency, providing a safety net for the elderly and vulnerable. These were monumental achievements, and I will not diminish them. They saved lives and rebuilt a nation. But in the midst of all that, I ignored a wound that ran even deeper than the economic crisis, a wound that had festered for centuries. The wound of racial injustice. The shame of it. The stain of inequality that marked the very soul of this nation. I am told that I did more than any president before me for the black community, fair enough. I created programs, I pushed for labor reforms, I appointed black men to important positions, including William H. Hastie as an aide in the Department of the Interior. We established the Fair Employment Practices Committee to combat discrimination in war industries. These steps mattered. They were progress. But when I stood before the nation, when I had the chance to make a stand on the things that truly mattered, I compromised. I was too reluctant to upset the delicate balance of Southern politics, too willing to make deals with segregationists, too unwilling to challenge the forces that perpetuated the injustice. I refused to confront the lynching that scarred the South. I did not push for anti-lynching legislation, even when I knew that the blood of innocent men and women was being spilled in the streets, their lives taken in the name of hate. I turned a blind eye to the cruelty that should have been met with my fiercest resolve. My silence, my inaction. I own it. I made deals with men who perpetuated inequality, who built their power upon the suffering of millions. I thought I was saving the Union, but I wasn't saving the soul of the nation. Yes, we fought for liberty abroad. We led a nation through World War II, stood firm against the tyranny of Hitler and his allies, and worked with Churchill and Stalin to forge a vision for the world after the war. But even as we spoke of freedom and human dignity, Jim Crow laws still reigned in the South, and racial segregation was the law of the land. The hypocrisy of it stings even now. And I wonder, when I see the faces of those who fought so long for the rights they were denied, when I hear their cries for justice, did I fail them? Did I turn my back on them? Was I so focused on the victory abroad, on the war that raged in Europe, that I forgot the war raging right here at home? I gave speeches about freedom and liberty, about the dignity of man. I spoke of a world where the strong would not trample the weak. And yet, right here in our own land, I allowed that very same tyranny to persist. Yes, I did what I could. I helped put food in the mouths of the hungry. I lifted the destitute from the pit of poverty. But there is a truth I cannot escape: I failed to extend the hand of justice to all. I did not do enough. I did not go far enough. And now, as I stand here in the twilight of my days, I see the scars of my mistakes. I see the fury of a people who were denied what was rightfully theirs, and I wonder, was my legacy of progress, of a new deal for the many, truly complete? Or was it, as so many legacies are, incomplete, marked by its failures as much as its triumphs? I am a man, like any other, with flaws and failings. I did what I thought was best. But my blindness to the deep injustice that has always poisoned our land, this is a mark I cannot wash away. I can only hope that the ones who come after me will have the courage to face what I could not. To confront the darkness, to stand not just for the promise of a better tomorrow, but for the promise of a tomorrow where every person, stands equal in the light of liberty.